Hi, debaters of YouTube. Let us talk about frameworks in debate. So frameworks, much like a lot of other skills in debate, like weighing or collapse, are concepts that are both important for debate in all kinds of different styles, but also important for individuals and society, which means that if you take them out of the debate round and into your head and use it as a way of thinking about different ideas and concepts in your life, you will be a much more effective thinker, a more effective presenter, and less likely to be victim of people who try to make you think in a certain way, less likely to be a victim of propaganda, of pushy sales, things like this. And the reason frameworks are so, well, effective but also important is essentially because we, as humans, are very limited animals. We have awful memories. Just look into the science of memory just a little bit, and you'll see that our memories are honestly atrocious, right? Like, we can't even remember things that we just saw. We're not going to remember them correctly. And even if you did, if you were, for example, cursed with a photographic memory, you can't use all that information. It's not like just because you have an excellent memory, you can therefore juggle 17 different ideas at once. You're probably still limited to being able to juggle like a couple ideas at once, right, in your working memory. So even though we are pretty remarkable animals, even though we have this incredible consciousness that makes us aware of all of these things in life, we are still but apes. And so the judge that you're trying to convince is just an ape in a tie sitting at a desk. There may be a special ape judging you, but they're just an animal. So you need to make the job of that judge voting for you easier by working with their honestly awful memory. Not that they're particularly awful, they're just all of us are awful, right? And one of the ways to do that is with frameworks. There are many devices we can use to remember things better, flashcards, or the memory palace is famous, or the biggest technology that humans have developed to remember things better are stories. So you don't remember the Lion King as all of these details and all of these characters and all these quotes. You remember this one chunk of the Lion King, right? And then within that chunk, you can put in all of these other details, and especially with the story, it's linear, it's how our brain works, and so we can remember things much better in that way. Frameworks are just another device that we can use to help the judge, in this case, remember what we're talking about, to focus on the right things, to pay attention to the right things, and to hopefully reject out of hand things that don't fit into that framework, for example, any of the opponent's arguments or their own framework. So, an example, before we get into debatey examples, an example of this might be if you were buying a car or a house, any number of things, right? There's many different factors you can focus on. So pretend you go to a car lot, right? And you have two different salesmen. Pretend for some reason there's two car lots right next to each other, right? There's two salesmen trying to get your attention. One says, Listen, Bob, the only thing you gotta pay attention to here is safety. I see you have 17 kids. They're all gonna be riding in this car. What do you care about more than your kids' health and safety? You can't be thinking about price like this guy's trying to sell you a cheap car. You gotta care about quality. It's of safety, sorry. Or like, listen, Jenny, looks like you're poor. You don't have any money. You need a cheap car. That's what we need to get you. That guy's saying your car will last forever. Who cares? You can't afford it. You need a cheap car. This is a framework that you can use to try to sell a car. Hopefully not that overtly, but yeah, quality or safety or price, they're all different things, and a salesman might bring one up to draw your attention to it, to say, hey, this is the important thing to focus on. Don't focus on those other things. Same thing we can do in framework. We have some kind of concept, some kind of topic, and we tell the judge, look, judge, here's the important thing in the topic. The rest of the things are not important. That's what we're doing here. So framework is, as you may already recognize, a kind of weighing. It is a kind of weighing that happens at the beginning of your case. At the beginning of first speech, this is where you're going to do this framework, this is where you're going to do this weighing. And a well-chosen framework can help you to focus the arguments, make them more persuasive to the judge. Let's go through a couple examples. We're just getting into word salad instead of understanding. Topic number one, the United States should adopt a universal healthcare system. So, a pro-framework in this case might be utilitarianism. Utilitarianism means we should do the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Universal healthcare does that by providing healthcare to everyone. A con-framework could be individual liberty. Judge, the thing we should focus on is one of the values that makes us Americans, individual choice. We can't have them choosing for all of us what healthcare options we have, what insurance plans we're being covered under. We should let people make up their own minds about this. Americans are not stupid, Judge. And so this is individual liberty, two different clashing frameworks. In this example, each side might have a few options. First, neither side has to run a framework. You don't need a framework for debate, so that option is on the table already. Just don't run any framework. In that case, you're giving over to the judge the choice to choose a framework, which might be an implicit framework, just some ideas in their head they have, or a framework can sort of naturally develop throughout the round by your arguments. Listen, Judge, we need to focus on this thing about how cost is so much. Okay, well, there's your framework as kind of economics, even if you don't explicitly state it up front. So it's not like not having a framework makes it impossible to focus the judge on something. It's totally possible. Framework just gives it that extra structure to tell the judge very explicitly what to focus on. So that's option one, is you don't have to run a framework. Option two, you can take your opponent's framework and say, look, let's go with the opponent's framework. It sounds good, that's fair. I still win on that framework, right? So that's option number two, and that is honestly a pretty good option. Their framework is great. I'll beat them with their framework. Well, let's focus on that thing. Of course, we win on that thing. Ideally, option three, you can win on both frameworks. So explain to the judge whether the judge picks your framework or picks their framework, you win either way. You're a great debater. Excellent. Option number four, the worst option, but if you gotta do it, you gotta do it. Argue the frameworks. Say, no, judge. Their framework is bad and my framework is better. Pick my framework, don't pick their framework, and explain why that might be. So in this example, you might say, reject utilitarianism, the greatest good for the greatest number of people. I'm sorry, reject their framework, because utilitarianism, greatest good for the greatest number of people, is the framework that we should argue this debate under. We should prefer a society where more people are treated better, instead of a society where people have the individual liberty to make bad decisions, to harm other people, or to cheat by not actively contributing to society, for example, through taxes, which help to fund universal basic healthcare. Yeah, universal healthcare. So another great option, if you need it, not the best option at all, actually, but if you need it, argue their framework. Say theirs is bad, ours is good. Like other parts of debate, these frameworks can be abusive, and that can be one of your rebuttals against the opponent's framework. Say, their framework is absurd. Of course they would win under it. We would have no grounds. It'd be impossible for us to win under it. And that's abusive. That's taking away from the educational value of this debate. It's making it unfair for us. You should reject their framework and maybe reject them altogether and go with us because they're being abusive. Depends on how far you want to kind of push that. So let's take another couple examples. Framework resolved. The United States should increase the minimum wage. A pro framework here might be economic justice, the fair distribution of resources, and a con framework could be economic efficiency, the efficient allocation of resources. I should be able to hire anyone at any wage. That's just the market doing its business. The government should not have any hand in deciding those kind of things. So this resolution, for example, might be an excellent place to include definitions, often a key part of frameworks, which can also be a great way of framing the debate. So on the recent student debt forgiveness debate, should the government forgive all student debt or not, you might include in your framework a definition of forgiveness to only include current and not future loans, thus limiting the scopes of cons attacks. So this word means this, that's the framework we should argue under, reject other definitions that they might bring up. And to not be abusive, ideally you're picking a framework, you're picking definitions that both sides can agree on and can have some common ground. Last example, the United States should legalize marijuana. Pro framework, individual liberty, the right to choose one's own lifestyle. Con framework, potential con framework, is public health, the protection of the public from the harmful effects of drugs. In this example, the two frameworks would likely come into conflict with each other, as it would be hard for con to argue that legalizing marijuana decreases individual liberty. It obviously increases individual liberty, so if pro came up with that framework, con would probably have to argue against it and say, no, that's not fair. There's no way we could win under that framework. Pro, however, could absolutely argue under con's public health framework that legal marijuana could lead to a decrease in the use of more harmful drugs like alcohol and pain pills. So here, the two sides would probably need to employ different strategies if indeed pro ran individual liberty and con ran public health. Okay, if you want to know more about the most common frameworks, please look up the following: deontology, utilitarianism, economic justice, human rights, and national security. Those are all things that different topics could fall under. Also, ask your teammates and ask your coaches about the common frameworks on your circuit, because different circuits can get obsessed with different frameworks. And most importantly, tailor your preparation and your frameworks to your specific topic, to your specific side, and to your specific case. What I've seen before, and don't get into this trap, don't get pigeonholed into always going for example, utilitarianism, just because you understand it well. Different topics, different sides, different arguments, different cases, different circuits will all require different approaches. And so without getting too bogged down, there are really a limited number of frameworks that most people tend to run, but don't limit yourself to those. You can frame the debate, make it easy for the judge to focus on anything that you choose that you think you'll be able to get away with as far as your opponents go. Again, that's not abusive, that fits in well with your case, that maybe aren't these more common things. So frameworks really can be a very expansive way to just start your case and tailor the judge's attentive palate to a certain place. So I will leave you with that. Please leave any comments about things that I missed about frameworks or other examples in the comments below. Also, please leave any questions. If I missed anything or you have questions on how to exactly use a framework for this or that topic, leave it in the comments below. Hope that helped, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.